Hi friends, this is your Yoganandam, biology lecturer from Edall Academy YouTube channel. In this class, we are going to discuss one of the important topic from 12th standard biology. The topic is ecosystem. You all know ecosystem can be visualized as a functional unit of nature where living organisms interact among themselves and also with surroundings, physical environment. Ecosystem varies greatly in size from small pond to large forest or sea. Many ecological regard the entire biosphere as a global ecosystem, as a composite of all local ecosystems on earth. Since this ecosystem is too much big and complex to be studied at one time, it is convenient to divide it into two basic categories, namely terrestrial and aquatic ecosystem. Forest, grassland and desert are some examples of terrestrial ecosystems. Pond, lake, wetland, river and estuary are some examples of aquatic ecosystems. Crop fields and an aquarium may also considered as man-made ecosystem. So here we are going to discuss some basic information about ecosystem in the part 1. First, we are going to discuss about what is ecosystem. Ecosystem is a functional unit of nature where living organisms interact with other and also with the physical environment is called as ecosystem. From this topic, we are going to discuss types of ecosystem, followed by function of ecosystem, decomposers and energy flow. So these are the four topics we are going to discuss in the part 1. First, we are going to discuss about types of ecosystem. Ecosystem broadly classified into, there are three types such as terrestrial ecosystem, examples forest, grassland, desert, etc. Second type is aquatic ecosystem. It includes pond, lake, wetland, river and estuary. Third one is man-made ecosystem. Example, crop field and aquarium. Types of ecosystem followed by ecosystem function. The entire biosphere is regarded as global ecosystem. In an ecosystem, biotic and abiotic components interact and function as a unit. Vertical distribution of different species occupying different level is called as stratification. Try to remember the term stratification. Vertical distribution of different species occupying different level is called as stratification. Example, in a forest, tree occupy top strata, shrub is the second strata and herbs and grasses the bottom layers. So these layers are generally called as stratification. Pond, aquatic ecosystem. Pond is an example for aquatic ecosystem. A pond is a shallow, simple, self-sustainable water body that exhibits all basic components of an ecosystem. What are the abiotic components which are present in pond? Water and soil deposits are abiotic components of pond. Climatic conditions, solar input, cycle of temperature, day length, etc. And autotrophic components are phytoplanktons, free floating plants, some algae and the floating, submerged and marginal plants. These are all some autotrophic components found in aquatic ecosystem. Consumers are commonly called as heterotrophs. Zooplanktons, free floating animals are called as zooplanktons. Free swimming and bottom dwelling forms. Decomposers such as fungi, bacteria and flagellates are seen in aquatic ecosystem. Pond perform all the function of an ecosystem. First one is autotroph. Autotrophs are primary producers. Autotrophs convert inorganic into organic material using solar radiant energy. So you all know autotrophs can prepare their own food material by the process photosynthesis. Heterotrophs consume autotrophs. All heterotrophs depend on autotrophs for their food as well as oxygen. Decomposition and mineralization of dead matter to release them back for reuse by the autotrophs. It is followed by, there are four basic components of an ecosystem. What are the four basic components of ecosystem? Productivity, decomposition, energy flow, nutrient cycling. These are the four basic components of an ecosystem. What do you know about productivity? A constant input of solar energy is the basic requirement for any ecosystem to function and sustain. Try to remember, solar energy is the basic requirement for an ecosystem to function and sustain. The amount of biomass, it is generally called as organic matter, produced per unit area over a time period by plant during photosynthesis is called as primary production. What is primary production? Amount of biomass produced per unit area in a particular unit area over a time period by plants during photosynthesis is called as primary production. It is expressed in weight, gram or energy in kilocalories. The rate of biomass production is called as productivity. It is expressed in either in grams per year or kilocalories per year. It is divided into gross primary productivity and net primary productivity, GPP and NPP. What is gross primary productivity? It is the rate of production of organic matter during photosynthesis. A considerable amount of gross primary productivity is used by plants for respiration. Gross primary productivity is the total production, the total productivity by plants. Then what is net primary productivity? It is the available biomass for consumption to heterotrophs, including herbivores and decomposers. Net primary productivity is gross primary productivity minus respiration losses. So try to understand, gross primary productivity is the total productivity. From the total primary productivity, while you are subtracting the amount of energy which is used during respiration, we will get net primary productivity. Secondary productivity. What do you know about secondary productivity? It is the rate of formation of new organic matter by consumers. Primary productivity varies in different ecosystem because it depends on the plant species inhabiting an area, environmental factors, availability of nutrients, photosynthetic capacity of plants. Annual net primary productivity of whole biosphere is about 170 billion tons in dry weight of organic matter. This, despite occupying 70% of the surface, the productivity of the ocean is only 55 billion tons. Try to remember the annual net primary productivity of whole biosphere as well as the productivity of the oceans is in how many billion tons? 55 billion tons. That also you try to remember. It is followed by decomposition. What do you know about decomposition? It is the breakdown of complex organic matter by decomposers into organic substances like carbon dioxide, water and nutrients called as decomposition. It is largely an oxygen requiring process. In the presence of oxygen only, a decomposition process that takes place. Raw material for decomposition is called as detritus. For example, dead plant remains such as leaves, bark, flowers, etc. Dead remains of animals such as fecal matter, etc. Here, steps of decomposition is given. Decomposition takes place by the following steps such as fragmentation, leaching, catabolism, humification, mineralization. Let us discuss one by one. First one is fragmentation. What is fragmentation? Breakdown of detritus into smaller particles by detritivores. Example, earthworm. Try to remember what is fragmentation. Breakdown of detritus into smaller particles are called as Fragmentation. This process carried out earthworm. Second step is leaching. The water-soluble inorganic nutrients go down into soil origin and precipitate as unavailable salt. It is called as leaching. It is followed by catabolism. Degradation of detritus into smaller, that is simpler inorganic substances by bacterial and fungal enzymes. So catabolic process takes place with the help of enzymes. So even during digestion, the process of digestion, complex food material broken into the corresponding simpler substances. It is otherwise called as breakdown process. The same process here also taken place, degradation of detritus into simpler inorganic substances by bacterial and fungal enzymes. Fragmentation, leaching and catabolism occur simultaneously. It is followed by humification, accumulation of humus, that means dark amorphous substance in soil. Humus is resistant to microbial action and so decomposes very slowly, being colloidal in nature, serves as reservoir of nutrients. It is followed by mineralization. Finally, the release of inorganic nutrients due to the degradation of humus by some microorganism takes place. So whichever the mineral elements are present in the humus, everything is released with the help of some microorganism. It is called as mineralization. So release of inorganic nutrients called as mineralization. So these are the 5 steps which are taken place during decomposition. Try to remember all the 5 steps such as fragmentation, leaching, catabolism, humification and mineralization. So this process is given with the help of diagrammatic representation. So how does the decomposition process takes place? It is given very clearly with the help of a diagram. See that. And what are the factors which are influencing decomposition? A chemical composition of detritus, climatic factor, that 2 factors are determining a decomposition process. Decomposition is slow in detritus rich in lignin and chitin. If the cell wall is made up of lignin and chitin, the decomposition process is slow. It is one of the important point. It is quicker if detritus is rich in nitrogen and water soluble substances like sugar. In case if the detritus contain more nitrogen as well as sugars, decomposition process takes place quickly. Climatic factors such as temperature and soil moisture also influencing decomposition process. Warm and moist environment favor for decomposition, as well as low temperature and anaerobiosis, that is in the absence of oxygen, inhibit decomposition resulting in buildup of organic materials. So try to remember, this page is one of the very important page. What are the factors which are influencing decomposition? When the cell wall, detritus cell wall is made up of lignin and chitin, the decomposition process is so slow, as well as if the detritus made up of nitrogen and sugar, the decomposition process takes place rapidly, as well as the decomposition is more favor and the condition is climatic factor is warm and moist environmental condition. In case low temperature and absence of oxygen inhibit decomposition process. It is followed by energy flow. What do you know about energy flow? Energy flow means the flow of energy from one level to another level. Sun is the only source of energy from all ecosystem except deep sea hydrothermal ecosystem. Of the incident solar radiation, less than 50% is photosynthetically active radiation. Plants and photosynthetic and chemosynthetic bacteria are called as autotrophs. They can fix solar radiant energy to make food. Plants capture only 2 to 10% of PAR, photosynthetically active radiation. This energy sustains the entire living world. Try to remember, for photosynthesis, plants are utilizing only 2 to 10% of active radiation only. so that can be used to sustain the entire living world. Ecosystems obey second law of thermodynamics. They need a constant supply of energy to synthesize the molecules. It helps to contract the entropy. So this is also one of the important topic. Try to remember, sun is the only source of energy for all ecosystems. So plants capture only 2 to 10% of photosynthetically active radiation. So this energy sustains the entire living world, the entire heterotroph, that the total animal kingdom depend on plants for their food as well as oxygen. First one is producers. Producers are commonly called as autotrophs. They are organisms that synthesize food. In a terrestrial ecosystem, major producers are herbaceous and woody plants. Primary producers in aquatic ecosystem are phytoplanktons, algae and higher plants. The energy trapped by producer is passed on to a consumer or the organism dies. Consumers are commonly called as heterotrophs. These are animals that directly or indirectly depend on plants for food. They include primary consumers, secondary consumers and tertiary consumers. Primary consumers are mostly herbivores, feed on plants, example insects, birds, mammals, mollusks, etc. Secondary consumers are otherwise called as primary carnivores, feed on herbivores, example frog, fox, man, etc. Tertiary consumers are otherwise called as secondary carnivores, feed on primary carnivores, example tiger, lion, etc. See the diagrammatic representation in the food chain. The producers are preparing their own food material by the process photosynthesis. The primary consumer depend on producers, so it is called as primary consumer. Then the frog is given, frog depend on primary consumer, so frog is an example for secondary consumer. Followed by snake, snake depend on secondary consumer, so snake is an example for tertiary consumer. It is followed by hawk is given, it is depend on tertiary consumer. Then finally, when at the end, so one day all the organisms laid to die, and that dead bodies are converted into decomposer. Dead bodies are converted into, once again through biogeochemical cycle, everything is converted into mineral elements. Again, at mineral elements utilized by producers. So the energy flow takes place from one level to another level. It begins from producers, ending with decomposers. This cyclic flow of energy is called as biogeochemical cycle. The chain of feeding relationship between different organisms is called as food chain. Food chain is broadly classified into two types: grazing food chain and detritus food chain. Grazing food chain, a primary consumer feeds on living plants, means producer. Say the cyclic flow, producer, primary consumer, secondary consumer. It is very clearly given with the help of diagrammatic representation. Here one organism is grazing another one. The second one is detritus food chain. Your primary consumer feeds on dead organic matter, that is detritus. So plants are getting nutrients from the soil, that means detritus. Death of organism is the beginning of detritus food chain. So what are the two types of food chain? Grazing food chain and detritus food chain. So what is the difference between grazing food chain and detritus food chain? That also you try to remember. Detritus is made up of decomposers. It is otherwise called as saprotrophs, such as fungi and bacteria. They secrete digestive enzymes that broke down detritus into simple inorganic material, which are absorbed by them. Thus they get energy and nutrients. See the diagrammatic representation. In an aquatic ecosystem, a grazing food chain is the major conduct for energy flow. In a terrestrial ecosystem, a much amount of energy flow through the detritus food chain than through grazing food chain. Detritus food chain may be connected with grazing food chain at some levels. Some organisms of detritus food chain are prey to the grazing food chain animals. Animals like cockroaches, crows, human, etc. are omnivores. Omnivores mean can eat both plants as well as flesh, as well as dead animals also can have as food. Such interconnections of food chains are called as food web. Or several food chain interconnect and together form food web. So what is the differences between grazing food chain and detritus food chain? In aquatic ecosystem, grazing food chain is a major conduct for energy flow, but in terrestrial ecosystem, detritus food chain is the major conduct of energy flow. That points you try to understand. A simplified place of organisms in the food chain is known as the trophic level. In trophic level, the energy transportation takes place from primary producer to primary consumer, from primary consumer to secondary consumer to tertiary consumer. See the flow chart, it's very clearly given. First trophic level, that is plants, phytoplanktons, grass, trees, etc. generally called as producers. Energy flows from primary producer to primary consumer. It is the second trophic level called as herbivore, zooplankton, grasshopper, cow, etc. Third, secondary consumer, carnivore, example birds, fishes, wolf, etc. Followed by fourth trophic level, top carnivore, example man, lion, etc. So your energy flows from one level to another level. See the energy flow through different trophic level is given with the help of diagrammatic representation. First trophic level, producers. Producers are trapping solar energy and prepare their own food material by the process photosynthesis. Then the energy travel towards second trophic level, primary consumers. From primary consumers to third trophic level, secondary consumers, carnivores. From secondary consumers to tertiary consumers, that is fourth level. So here energy flows from one level to another level. The amount of energy decreases at successive trophic levels. When an ecosystem dies, it becomes dead biomass. It is commonly called as detritus. It is an energy source for decomposers. The organism at each trophic level depend on those at the lower trophic level for energy. For example, second trophic level organisms completely depend on producers, and third trophic level depend on secondary trophic level organisms. So here one level depend on another level. Organism at each trophic level depend on those at lower trophic level for energy source. The amount of living material in a trophic level at a given time is called as standing crop. What is standing crop? The amount of living material in a trophic level, that means plants in a trophic level at a given time is called as standing crop. It is measured as biomass. Biomass means mass of living organisms or number in a unit area. Biomass of a species is measured in terms of fresh or dry weight. The dry weight is more accurate because it is the exact mass of body which remains constant. The number of trophic level in grazing food chain is restricted as it follows 10% law. Only 10% of energy is transferred from one trophic level to another trophic level. So try to understand, this is one of the very, very important law. Linderman proposed. Thank you very much for listening this video. Those who are watching this video, you are requested to like, subscribe and share to your friends. For more details, you are requested to visit edallacademy.in. All the best.